The blood under Maya Rodriguez's fingernails wasn't her own, it never was. She stared at her hands wrapped around the steering wheel of her beat-up Honda Civic, the hospital parking lot lights casting harsh shadows across her dark skin. 12 hours in the ER. 3 cardiac arrests, 2 overdoses, and 1 6-year-old who'd fallen from a second-story window. The kid would make it. They always fought hardest, the little ones. Maya flexed her fingers, watching tendons move beneath scars that most people never noticed. Thin white lines that spoke of a different life, a different version of herself that officially died 3 years ago in a Syrian desert. Now she was just Maya Rodriguez, night shift trauma nurse at Chicago General, who lived alone in a studio apartment and whose biggest excitement was whether the cafeteria would have decent coffee. She almost laughed at the lie of it. The engine ticked as it cooled, protesting the late October chill that cut through her thin scrubs. She should go home. Shower off the antiseptic smell, the lingering taste of other people's emergencies. Sleep for 6 hours and do it all again. That was the routine that kept her invisible, kept her safe. Instead, she found herself walking toward Rusty's bar 3 blocks from the hospital, her sneakers silent on cracked sidewalk. The neon sign flickered intermittently, Russ Wise Br., like a coded message only she could read. The kind of dive where night shift workers came to decompress, where nobody asked questions and the whiskey was strong enough to burn away the images that followed you home. The heavy door swung shut behind her with a satisfying thud, cutting off the street noise. Inside, the familiar smell of stale beer, cigarettes, and decades of secrets hit her like an embrace. Maya had been coming here for 8 months, long enough to earn a nod from Big Eddie behind the bar and a designated stool at the far end where she could watch the room while keeping her back to the wall. Old habits. Rough night? Eddie's voice carried the gravelly tone of a man who'd seen everything twice. He was already reaching for the bottle of Jameson before she settled onto her stool. Kid fell out a window. Maya accepted the double shot, neat. Compound fracture of the left femur, possible internal bleeding. But his vitals stayed strong. Eddie nodded like he understood, though she doubted he knew a femur from a funny bone. It didn't matter. What mattered was the ritual, the human connection that reminded her she was still among the living. The whiskey burned pleasantly as she surveyed the bar's sparse Tuesday night crowd. Sarah, the young bartender working the other end, moved with the careful efficiency of someone still learning the job. A few regulars hunched over their drinks, lost in private worlds. 2 men in business suits argued quietly over a basket of stale pretzels. Peaceful. Normal. Everything Maya's former life had never been. The peace shattered like glass against concrete when the front door exploded open. They walked in like they owned the place, 6 men in leather vests, heavy boots, and the kind of presence that made civilians step aside without conscious thought. The patches on their backs told the story, Iron Wolves MC, Chicago chapter. The largest man led the pack, a mountain of muscle and ink who had to duck slightly to clear the doorframe. Tank Morrison. Maya recognized him from the police reports that sometimes crossed her desk when his boys ended up in her trauma bay. 6'5", 280 pounds of barely controlled violence wrapped in denim and leather. Prison tattoos crawled up his neck like black ivy, and his eyes held the flat stare of a predator sizing up prey. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Evening, folks. Tank's voice carried across the suddenly silent bar like a death knell. Don't mind us. Just looking for a quiet place to wet our whistles. Maya's hand tightened around her glass. Every instinct she'd honed in dark places across 3 continents screamed at her to move, to position herself for maximum tactical advantage. Instead, she forced herself to take another sip of whiskey and watch the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. The bikers spread out with military precision, flanking positions, covering exits, establishing fields of fire. These weren't weekend warriors playing dress-up. These men had seen real combat, real blood. Maya could read it in their movements, their spacing, the way they unconsciously checked 6 before settling into position. Tank approached the bar with the swagger of a man who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with his fists. Sarah, barely 22 with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, tried to shrink into invisibility behind the taps. "What can I get you?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Tank leaned against the bar, his massive frame dwarfing the young woman. "Well now, sweetheart, that depends on what you're offering." The words carried implications that made Sarah's face go pale. She fumbled with a glass, nearly dropping it as Tank's smile spread like an oil slick. We have beer. Budweiser, Miller, some local stuff." "Local stuff." Tank reached across the bar, his fingers trailing along Sarah's wrist as she tried to pull away. "I like supporting the community." "What else you got that's local?" Maya felt something cold settle in her chest, something that had nothing to do with the whiskey. She'd seen this scene play out in a dozen different countries, in places where the strong preyed on the weak and nobody with sense interfered. She'd learned to walk away, to pick her battles, to stay invisible. Sarah's hand shook as Tank's grip tightened on her wrist. Maya stood up. The movement was fluid, controlled, the way she'd been trained to move when seconds mattered and hesitation meant death. Every eye in the bar turned toward her, but she focused solely on Tank's reflection in the mirror. "Problem here?" Her voice carried the kind of calm authority that came from talking down armed insurgents and shell-shocked soldiers. Low, steady, absolutely unafraid. Tank slowly turned, his hand still wrapped around Sarah's wrist. When he saw Maya, 5'6", maybe 130 soaking wet, wearing scrubs that had seen better days, his smile widened into something genuinely amused. "No problem at all, nurse lady. Just having a friendly conversation with the help." His eyes swept over her dismissively. "Nothing that concerns you." Let go of her wrist. The words hung in the air like a challenge flag. Tank's expression shifted, amusement fading into something darker. Behind him, his boys straightened, hands drifting toward weapons Maya was sure they carried. "You know what I think?" Tank released Sarah, who stumbled backward against the beer cooler. "I think you've been working too many night shifts. Getting delusions of grandeur. Maybe you should head on home before you get hurt." Maya met his gaze in the mirror, her reflection steady and unblinking. "I think you should take your business elsewhere." The silence stretched between them like a loaded spring. Tank took a step toward her, then another, his boots heavy on the scarred wooden floor. Maya remained perfectly still, her weight balanced on the balls of her feet, hands loose at her sides. "Lady, you got about 10 seconds to apologize and walk out that door. After that, what?" Maya finally turned to face him directly. "You'll what? Beat up a nurse? In front of witnesses? Real tough guy." Tank's face flushed dark red above his beard. "You got a smart mouth. Maybe it's time someone taught you when to keep it shut." His hand shot out faster than most people could track, fingers closing around the front of Maya's scrub top. The fabric, already thin from countless washings, gave way with a sharp tearing sound that echoed through the bar like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Tank saw what lay beneath the torn scrubs, and the blood drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. The tattoo spread across Maya's back and shoulder in intricate detail, the golden eagle and trident of the Navy SEALs intertwined with symbols that spoke of classified operations and brothers lost in foreign sand. Names and dates marched in precise formation along her spine, coordinates that marked places officially removed from every map. But it was the serpent wrapped around the medical caduceus that made Tank take an involuntary step backward, his hand falling away from her torn shirt. "Shadow medic." The words were barely a whisper, but in the absolute silence of the bar, they carried like a shout. Maya straightened, her dark eyes never leaving Tank's face. The scared girl in scrubs was gone, replaced by something harder, something that had crawled out of hell itself and learned to smile. "Now," she said softly, "I believe I asked you to leave." If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The silence in Rusty's bar stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Maya stood perfectly still as every pair of eyes in the room traced the intricate artwork that mapped her exposed back and shoulder. The torn scrub top hung in shreds from Tank's nerveless fingers, forgotten in his shock. The tattoo was a masterpiece of military artistry and painful memory. At the center, the golden eagle of the Navy SEAL spread its wings across Maya's left shoulder blade, its talons gripping the trident that marked her as one of the elite. But this wasn't the standard SEAL insignia. Intertwined with the traditional symbols were additions that made Tank's breath catch in his throat. Skull and crossbones marked classified operations. A series of small stars along her spine commemorated missions that officially never happened. Coordinates were etched in precise script along her ribs: 36 degrees 12 minutes north, 37 degrees 9 minutes east, Aleppo. 33 degrees 20 minutes north, 44 degrees 25 minutes east, Baghdad. 34 degrees 32 minutes north, 69 degrees 10 minutes east, Kabul. Each location told a story of shadow operations, of American soldiers who died in places their government would never acknowledge they'd been. But it was the names that made Tank's hands shake. Carved in elegant script along the curve of Maya's shoulder: Rodriguez, Chen, Williams, Hassan, Morrison. His brother Danny's name was there, permanent as a gravestone, beautiful as a prayer. Jesus Christ, whispered Spike, Tank's lieutenant, his own military ink suddenly seeming like child's play. She's a fucking SEAL. Not just any SEAL. Tank's voice was hoarse, barely recognizable. His eyes were fixed on his brother's name, on the small cross tattooed beside it that marked Danny as Kia. You're Shadow Med. Maya's dark eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise, but her voice remained steady. That's ancient history. Ancient history? Tank laughed, but there was no humor in it, only a kind of desperate disbelief. Lady, my brother used to write letters about you. Called you the angel of death because you could bring people back from the other side, patch them up so they could fight another day. His voice cracked slightly. He said you saved his life twice in Kandahar. The revelation rippled through the bar like a stone dropped in still water. Sarah huddled behind the beer taps, her earlier fear replaced by wide-eyed fascination. The business suits had stopped their argument entirely, staring at the woman who looked like she should be taking their blood pressure, not carrying the scars of America's secret wars. Maya slowly turned, giving the room a full view of the artwork that told the story of her hidden life. Along her spine, between the coordinates and names, ran a serpent in medical green and gold. It wrapped around a caduceus, the staff of Hermes, symbol of healing, but this version was different. The traditional wings had been replaced with the wings of a military transport, and beneath it, in stark black letters, Shadow Medic. The program was classified, Maya said, her tone conversational as if she were discussing the weather. She made no attempt to cover herself, wearing her scars and ink like armor. Navy medics embedded with special operations units. We went where regular corpsmen couldn't go, did things regular corpsmen weren't trained to do. Tank stepped closer, his earlier aggression replaced by something approaching reverence. Danny said you could perform surgery in a foxhole under enemy fire. Said you once restarted a guy's heart with nothing but a car battery and some jumper cables. Field expedient medicine. Maya's lips curved in what might have been a smile, but her eyes remained cold. You do what you have to do to bring your people home. But you didn't come home, did you? This from Razor, Tank's road captain, a wiry man with intelligent eyes who'd served 2 tours in Iraq. Danny said your whole unit got hit by an IED outside Damascus. No survivors. No official survivors, Maya corrected. Officially, we were never there. The weight of that statement settled over the room like smoke. Eddie, who'd been polishing the same glass for the past 5 minutes, finally set it down with hands that weren't quite steady. In his 60-plus years tending bar, he'd heard his share of war stories, but this was different. This was the real thing, standing in his bar wearing scrubs and scars like badges of honor. Tank was studying the tattoo with the focus of a man trying to solve a puzzle. The coordinates, these are all over the Middle East. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. His finger hovered over her skin without quite touching. How many tours? Officially? None. Maya's voice carried a bitter edge. Shadow Med didn't exist, remember? We were ghosts. But the work was real. Tank's voice was barely above a whisper. The people you saved were real. My brother was real. For the first time since the confrontation began, something flickered across Maya's face, a crack in the armor that revealed the woman beneath the warrior. Danny was a good soldier. A good man. He deserved better than dying in a war nobody wants to remember. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken grief and shared loss. Tank's massive frame seemed to deflate slightly, the aggressive posture giving way to something more human, more vulnerable. How? He asked simply. How did you survive when everyone else? Maya's jaw tightened. Wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe right place, right time, depending on how you look at it. She pulled the remnants of her scrub top together, finally showing some awareness of her exposure. I was treating a wounded local when the convoy got hit. The blast threw me clear, buried me under rubble. Took 3 days for rescue teams to find me. And the others? Gone. The word fell like a stone into deep water. All of them. Except officially, we were never there, so there was nothing to investigate, no one to court-martial, no stories to tell. Her eyes swept the room, taking in every face, memorizing every witness to her revelation. The program was classified beyond black. When we died, we just disappeared. Tank was quiet for a long moment, his eyes still fixed on his brother's name among the memorial tattoos. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. So what are you doing here? In Chicago, working in a hospital, pretending to be normal? Because normal is what keeps me alive. Maya's voice carried a warning edge. Normal means nobody asks questions about skill sets that don't match my official background. Normal means I can help people without explaining why I know 17 different ways to stop arterial bleeding. But you're not normal. This from Sarah, who had found her voice again. You're a hero. Maya's laugh was sharp, cutting. Heroes don't survive when everyone else dies, sweetheart. Heroes don't spend 3 years pretending to be someone else while their teammates' families think they're buried in Arlington. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Tank's boys exchanged glances, recognizing the tone of someone who'd walked through hell and come out the other side carrying pieces of it with them. The families. Tank began. Think I'm dead. Maya's voice was flat, final. It's better that way. Cleaner. No uncomfortable questions about classified operations or why their sons died for a mission that officially never happened. Tank studied her face, reading the pain she tried so hard to hide. That's not living, that's just surviving. Sometimes surviving is enough. The words hung in the air like a confession, raw and honest in a way that made everyone in the bar suddenly aware they were witnessing something private, something sacred. Maya Rodriguez, trauma nurse, was a carefully constructed fiction. The woman standing before them, marked with the scars and stories of America's shadow wars, was the truth she'd been hiding for 3 years. Eddie broke the spell by reaching under the bar and producing a clean towel. Might want to cover up, honey. Not that any of us mind the view, but you're gonna catch your death. Maya accepted the towel with a nod of thanks, wrapping it around her shoulders like a shawl. The gesture was oddly vulnerable, almost childlike, at odds with the warrior's marks she bore. Tank was still staring at the names on her shoulder, at his brother's name specifically. Would it be okay if I touched it? Danny's name? The question was asked with such quiet reverence that Maya felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. She turned slightly, presenting her shoulder. Tank's finger traced his brother's name with infinite care, as if he were touching something holy. He talked about you constantly, Tank said softly. Called you Doc, said you were tougher than half the SEALs and smarter than all of them. Said you once performed emergency surgery on him using nothing but a field kit and a flashlight. Appendectomy, Maya said quietly. In a cave outside Kabul. He was burning up with fever, and we were 3 days from any kind of real medical facility. He said you saved his life. He saved mine too. More than once. Maya's voice was thick with memory. He was a good man, Tank. One of the best I ever served with. Tank's hand dropped away from her shoulder, but his eyes remained fixed on the memorial ink. His real name was Daniel. Daniel Morrison. But everyone called him Lucky. Not everyone. Maya's lips curved in the ghost of a smile. I called him Sunshine. Kid had a smile that could light up a bunker. Tank's own smile was watery, but genuine. Yeah, he did. The moment of connection was broken by the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. In the far corner of the bar, a figure that had gone unnoticed in all the drama slowly rose to his feet. He was older, maybe 60, with steel-gray hair and the kind of military bearing that never quite goes away. His face had gone pale as parchment, and his hands shook as he stared at Maya. Maya Rodriguez? The voice was barely a whisper, cracked with disbelief and something that might have been hope. Dear God, we thought you were dead. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Maya's entire body went rigid at the sound of that voice, a voice she'd heard barking orders across 3 continents, a voice that had been her lifeline in the darkest moments of her military career. Slowly, as if moving through underwater currents, she turned toward the corner of the bar. Commander James "Hawk" Harrison stood in the shadows like a ghost materialized from her worst nightmares. At 62, he still carried himself with the ramrod posture of a career military man, though the years had etched deep lines around his steel-gray eyes and turned his hair the color of winter storms. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, worn leather jacket, but they couldn't disguise the predatory alertness that marked him as a warrior. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her hip, muscle memory reaching for a sidearm that hadn't been there in 3 years. Hawk. The name came out like a curse, low and dangerous. Easy, document. Harrison raised both hands in a gesture of peace, but his eyes never left her face. I'm not here in any official capacity. Tank stepped protectively closer to Maya, his earlier aggression returning full force. Lady, you know this guy? Maya's laugh was bitter as broken glass. Know him? He's the son of a bitch who got my team killed. The accusation hit the bar like a physical blow. Harrison flinched as if she'd struck him, his face aging 10 years in an instant. Maya, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Maya's voice carried the cold fury of someone who'd spent 3 years nurturing her rage. Classified mission. Need to know basis. Trust the chain of command. How did that work out, Commander? Harrison moved closer, his steps careful and deliberate. Every person in the bar tracked his movement, sensing the dangerous undercurrents flowing between these 2 people. May I sit? This conversation requires more than sound bites and accusations. Maya studied his face, reading the exhaustion there, the weight of secrets that had carved furrows in his brow. Finally, she nodded toward an empty table in the center of the room. Talk. But make it quick. I've got a life to get back to. No, Harrison said quietly as he settled into the chair across from her. You don't. You've got an existence. There's a difference. Tank positioned himself at Maya's shoulder, close enough to act if needed but far enough to give them space. The other bikers formed a loose perimeter, their earlier respect for Maya having evolved into something approaching protective instinct. Even Eddie had moved closer, polishing glasses with unusual intensity. Harrison folded his hands on the scarred wooden table, his wedding ring catching the bar's dim light. You want the truth? The whole truth? I've been waiting 3 years for it. Shadow Med was my program. Harrison's voice carried the weight of confession. My baby. I handpicked every medic, designed every protocol. The Pentagon wanted combat medics who could operate in situations too classified for regular personnel. Black sites, extraordinary rendition, enhanced interrogation. Places where officially, no Americans had ever set foot. Maya's jaw tightened. We weren't just medics. We were accessories to war crimes. You were patriots doing an impossible job in an impossible situation. Harrison's voice hardened. You saved lives, Maya. American lives. Lives that mattered. What about the lives we didn't save? The prisoners who died under interrogation? The civilians caught in the crossfire? Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Did their lives matter, Hawk? Harrison was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. You think I don't carry those ghosts? You think I sleep well at night knowing what I sent you kids into? You sent us into hell and then you left us there to die. I didn't, Harrison's voice cracked, then steadied. The intelligence was solid. The extraction plan was foolproof. How was I supposed to know that someone in the chain had sold you out? The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She sat back in her chair, her face pale. Sold us out? The ambush in Syria wasn't random, Maya. It was targeted. Someone with access to classified mission parameters gave your location to hostile forces. Harrison's eyes were haunted. Your entire team was betrayed by someone on the inside. Tank's hand dropped to Maya's shoulder, offering silent support. Around the bar, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees as the implications of Harrison's words sank in. Who? Maya's voice was barely audible. That's what I've been trying to find out for 3 years. Harrison pulled a manila envelope from inside his jacket, setting it carefully on the table between them. When the Pentagon declared your team Kia, they shut down Shadow Med entirely. Classified the records beyond black, sealed everything under national security protocols. Maya stared at the envelope as if it might contain a snake. What's in there? Everything I could piece together. Mission reports, communications logs, financial records. Someone with high-level clearance fed information to Syrian intelligence. Someone who knew your routes, your safe houses, your extraction points. Why are you telling me this now? Maya's hand hovered over the envelope, not quite touching it. Why not 3 years ago? Harrison's smile was grim. Because 3 years ago, I thought you were dead. Like everyone else, I attended your memorial service. I folded the flag they gave your foster parents. I carried that guilt every day, knowing I'd sent you to die for a mission that was compromised from the start. How did you find me? I didn't. Finding you was pure chance. Harrison gestured toward the bar around them. I've been coming here for 6 months. My daughter lives in Chicago, and this place reminds me of the bars I used to drink in overseas. Never expected to see a ghost walk through that door. Maya opened the envelope with trembling fingers, scanning the documents inside. Her face grew paler with each page. These financial transfers, they're from a CIA slush fund. $50 million paid to a Syrian intelligence officer named al-Rashid. The transfer was authorized 3 days before your mission. Harrison's voice was flat, professional. Al-Rashid was captured by Kurdish forces 6 months ago. Before he died, he talked. He knew details about Shadow Med operations that only someone with the highest clearance could have known. Someone in the CIA sold us out. Maya's voice was numb with shock. Someone high enough to authorize off-books payments. Someone with access to Pentagon black programs. Harrison leaned forward. Maya, whoever betrayed your team, they're still out there. Still active. Still dangerous. Tank had been following the conversation with growing anger. Wait a minute. You're telling me that someone in our own government got her team killed? On purpose? Shadow Med saw things, Harrison said quietly. Documented things. Your team was embedded with units conducting enhanced interrogations, extraordinary renditions, actions that violated both military law and international treaties. If that information had come to light, it would have been a scandal that could bring down administrations, Maya finished. So when we became inconvenient witnesses, someone decided to tie up loose ends. Harrison's voice was grim. The ambush killed your team and buried the evidence. Officially, Shadow Med never existed, so there was nothing to investigate. Maya stood abruptly, pacing to the bar's front window. Outside, Chicago's late-night traffic moved in lazy patterns, normal people living normal lives, blissfully unaware of the shadows that moved behind their government's public face. "Why now?" she asked without turning around. "Why surface this now?" "Because 3 months ago, another unit with similar knowledge was hit in Afghanistan. Same pattern, same betrayal markers." Harrison's voice was heavy with implication. "Whoever killed your team, they're still active. Still cleaning up loose ends." Maya spun around, her face a mask of controlled fury. "How many teams?" "For that I can confirm. Maybe more." Harrison stood, moving toward her with careful steps. "Maya, you're not safe. If they find out you survived, they already know." The words came from Tank, who was staring at Maya's phone on the table. The screen had lit up with an incoming text message, the notification tone cutting through the bar's heavy silence like a knife. Maya moved quickly, snatching up the phone. The message was from an unknown number, no caller ID, no identifying information. Just 7 words that made her blood run cold. "We know you're alive. You have 24 hours. The phone slipped from Maya's nerveless fingers, clattering on the wooden floor. Around the bar, the silence stretched like a held breath, heavy with the weight of imminent danger. Harrison was beside her in 2 quick steps, his face grim as he read the message. "They found you." "How?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "I've been careful. New identity, new life, no contact with anyone from the old days. Doesn't matter now." Harrison's military training kicked in, his voice becoming crisp and authoritative. "We need to move. Get you somewhere safe while we figure out our next step." Tank stepped forward, his massive frame blocking the bar's front window. "Nobody's going anywhere until someone explains what the hell is happening here." Maya looked around the bar, at Tank and his bikers, at Sarah cowering behind the taps, at Eddie who had become an unwitting witness to secrets that could get them all killed. These people had become collateral damage simply by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. "You need to leave," she said quietly. "All of you. Forget what you saw here tonight, forget you ever met me. These people, they don't leave witnesses." Tank's jaw set in a stubborn line. "Like hell. You're not facing this alone." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was an image, a photograph taken through the bar's front window, showing all of them clearly visible in the yellow light. Below the image, 2 more words: "Time's up." If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. Maya stared at the photograph on her phone screen, her trained mind automatically cataloging tactical details even as fear clawed at her throat. The angle suggested the photographer was positioned across the street, possibly on a rooftop. Professional equipment, the image was crisp despite the low light and distance. Multiple subjects in frame, which meant a telephoto lens with military-grade night vision capabilities. Not a lucky amateur. A professional hunter. "Everyone away from the windows," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in life-or-death situations. "Now." Tank didn't hesitate, his own combat instincts recognizing the shift in Maya's tone. He gestured sharply to his men. "You heard her. Move." The iron wolves scattered with practiced efficiency, taking positions that kept them clear of sight lines while maintaining defensive positioning. Sarah scrambled toward the back of the bar, her face pale with terror. Eddie grabbed a shotgun from beneath the register, his hands steady despite his age. Harrison moved to Maya's side, his own phone already in his hand. "How many assets do you think they have in position?" "Minimum of 3, Maya replied, her eyes scanning the bar's interior with new purpose. "Spotter across the street, probably a sniper team on Overwatch, and at least 1 ground team for breach and clear." She looked at Harrison with cold calculation. "Question is, do they want me alive or dead?" "Alive," Harrison said without hesitation. "If they just wanted you dead, you'd already be bleeding out on the floor. They want information, what you know, who you've told, what evidence you might have stashed away." Tank stepped closer, his massive frame radiating protective aggression. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Maya's mind raced through tactical probabilities. They sent the warning to flush me out, make me panic and run. When I don't take the bait, they'll move to containment. She checked her watch, 11:47 p.m. I'd say we have maybe 10 minutes before they make their move. Then we get you out of here, Tank said firmly. My boys and I can. No. Maya's voice was sharp as a blade. You don't understand what you're up against. These aren't street thugs or even regular military. These are CIA wet work specialists with unlimited resources and zero accountability. She looked around the bar at the faces watching her, Tank's crew, Sarah, Eddie, even Harrison. Everyone in this room is now a liability. They'll kill all of you just to tie up loose ends. Like hell they will. Tank's voice carried the rumble of distant thunder. Nobody threatens my people. And whether you like it or not, you're under Iron Wolf's protection now. Maya stared at him in disbelief. You don't even know me. I know enough. Tank's eyes were hard as flint. I know you saved my brother's life. I know you've been carrying the names of dead soldiers on your back for 3 years, honoring their memory when the government that sent them to die won't even acknowledge they existed. His voice softened slightly. And I know what it looks like when someone's been running scared and alone for too long. The words hit Maya harder than she'd expected. For 3 years, she'd told herself that isolation was safety, that caring about people would only get them hurt. But looking at Tank's face, seeing the determination there, she felt something she hadn't experienced since Syria, the possibility of not facing her demons alone. Harrison stepped forward. Tank's right. You can't run forever, Maya. These people won't stop. They've invested too much in keeping Shadow Med buried to let a survivor expose the truth. So what do you suggest? Start a war with the CIA? Maya's laugh was bitter. Even if we could win, which we can't, how many innocent people die in the process? Maybe it's time to stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a soldier, Harrison said quietly. You have intelligence they need to keep buried. That makes you dangerous to them, but it also gives you leverage. Tank nodded slowly. The commander's got a point. Instead of running, we make them come to us. On our terms, our ground. Maya felt a spark of something she'd thought was dead, hope mixed with the familiar burn of tactical planning. The CIA operatives behind this, they're not just cleaning up loose ends. Harrison, you said other teams have been hit recently? 4 confirmed, possibly more. Same pattern as Syria? Identical. Compromised intelligence, targeted ambushes, no survivors. Maya began pacing, her mind working through the implications. They're not just covering up war crimes. They're covering up something bigger. Something worth killing dozens of elite operators to protect. Tank watched her move, recognizing the predatory grace of someone shifting into combat mode. What kind of bigger? Arms dealing, Maya said with sudden certainty. Shadow Med teams were embedded with units conducting extraordinary renditions, enhanced interrogations. We saw weapons being moved, money changing hands, deals being made with people who were supposed to be our enemies. She stopped pacing, her eyes bright with dangerous understanding. What if the CIA wasn't just looking the other way? What if they were facilitating it? Harrison's face went pale. Jesus. You're talking about treason at the highest levels. I'm talking about a rogue faction within the CIA using the war on terror as cover for a private arms dealing operation, Maya said. Selling weapons to both sides, prolonging conflicts to maximize profits. Shadow Med teams were witnesses to transactions that could expose the whole network. Tank let out a low whistle. That's a hell of an accusation, document. It's not an accusation. It's a theory that fits the facts. Maya's voice carried the conviction of someone who'd finally found the missing piece of a 3-year-old puzzle. Think about it, why kill entire teams of elite operators? Why not just transfer us, reassign us, bury us in desk jobs? Because we saw something that couldn't be explained away or covered up with new orders. Before anyone could respond, Maya's phone buzzed again. This time the message was longer. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, RN, Chicago General Hospital, apartment 4B at 1247 Maple Street. Sarah Chen, bartender, lives with her mother at 892 Oak Avenue. Edward Martinez, bar owner, grandchildren attend Lincoln Elementary. We know where everyone sleeps. Come alone to the address we send, or watch them all die. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya felt the bottom drop out of her world as she realized the full scope of the threat. These people hadn't just found her, they'd mapped her entire life, identified everyone she'd interacted with, turned her few human connections into weapons against her. They have my address, Sarah whispered, her face white with terror. They know about my mom. Eddie's knuckles were white where he gripped his shotgun. My grandkids. Tank's expression had gone stone cold. Nobody threatens kids. Nobody. Maya looked around the room at these people who'd become inadvertent targets simply by being in her proximity. The weight of their danger pressed down on her like a physical force. For 3 years, she'd isolated herself to prevent exactly this scenario. Now her worst fears were being realized. I have to go, she said quietly. It's the only way to keep you safe. Like hell. Tank stepped between Maya and the door, his bulk an immovable barrier. You walk out that door alone, you're dead. And dying won't save any of us, it'll just make us loose ends that need cleaning up. Harrison nodded grimly. Tank's right. These people don't leave witnesses. Your death won't protect anyone. Maya felt trapped between impossible choices, surrender and die, or fight and watch innocent people pay the price for her battles. She closed her eyes, trying to find clarity in the chaos of her emotions. When she opened them, her decision was made. Then we don't give them a choice in the matter, she said, her voice carrying the steel of someone who'd faced death before and chosen to fight. Harrison, you said you've been investigating this for 3 years. What assets do you have? Off the books? Some contacts at NSA, a few Pentagon allies who were never comfortable with how Shadow Med was shut down. Harrison's eyes sharpened. Why? Because we're going to expose these bastards. All of them. Every arms deal, every bribe, every murdered soldier. Maya's voice grew stronger with each word. They want a war? Let's give them one. Tank grinned, the expression transforming his scarred face into something genuinely frightening. Now you're talking my language, document. The Iron Wolves have some resources of our own. Military contractors, security specialists, a few boys who know how to handle themselves in a fight. This isn't going to be a bar brawl, Maya warned. These are professional killers with government backing. So were we, once upon a time, Tank replied. Difference is, we fight for family now. And your family. Maya felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't alone. For the first time since Syria, she had people willing to stand with her against the darkness. Her phone buzzed with an address and a time, Warehouse District, Pier 47. 1 hour. Come alone or everyone dies. Maya showed the message to Tank and Harrison. 1 hour. That's not much time to plan. Then we better get started, Tank said, already moving toward the bar's back room. Boys, time to gear up. Looks like we're going to war. As the Iron Wolves began pulling weapons from hidden caches around the bar, Maya felt the familiar calm of pre-combat settling over her. The scared nurse was gone, replaced by the shadow medic who'd survived hell itself. But as she moved toward the window to assess their tactical situation, she froze. 3 red dots had appeared on the glass, laser sights from high-powered rifles, painting perfect kill shots on anyone foolish enough to stand in the light. Get down, she screamed, but it was already too late. The hunters had found them. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. Maya's warning came a heartbeat too late. The front windows of Rusty's bar exploded inward in a cascade of razor-sharp glass as 3 simultaneous sniper rounds punched through the night. The shots weren't meant to kill, they were a calling card, a demonstration of precision that said we can end this whenever we choose. Down. Everyone down. Maya hit the floor hard, rolling behind the bar as chaos erupted around her. The iron wolves scattered with military precision, their earlier caution replaced by the fluid movements of men who'd danced with death before. Tank vaulted over a table, drawing a .45 from beneath his leather vest in one smooth motion. Razor. Get Sarah and Eddie to the back room. Spike, cover the rear exit. Already on it, boss. Razor grabbed Sarah by the arm, half carrying the terrified bartender toward the bar's storage area. Eddie followed, his shotgun clutched in white-knuckled hands. Harrison had produced a Glock from somewhere, checking the chamber with the automatic efficiency of someone who'd never forgotten his training. Maya. How many entry points? Front door, back exit, kitchen window, and the skylight. Maya's voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. If they're professionals, they'll hit us from multiple angles. As if summoned by her words, the front door burst open with explosive force. 4 figures in black tactical gear flowed through the breach like deadly smoke, their movements coordinated and lethal. Night vision goggles, body armor, suppressed automatic weapons, these weren't street thugs or even regular military contractors. These were Tier 1 operators, the kind of mercenaries that governments hired when they needed problems solved quietly and permanently. Maya's world shifted, the familiar calm of combat settling over her like a second skin. The scared nurse disappeared entirely, replaced by the shadow medic who'd survived 3 tours in Hell's backyard. She rolled behind the bar, her hands finding the first aid kit she'd noticed earlier, not for healing now, but for killing. The lead attacker swept his weapon toward Tank's position, finger tightening on the trigger. Maya moved without conscious thought, hurling a scalpel with surgical precision. The blade took the mercenary in the throat, just above his body armor, severing his carotid artery in a spray of crimson. He dropped his weapon, hands clutching his neck as he bled out in seconds. Holy shit, breathed Spike, staring at Maya with new respect. Did she just? Less talking, more shooting. Tank barked, laying down covering fire as 2 more mercenaries flanked left. His .45 boomed in the confined space, the heavy slugs punching through drywall and sending the attackers diving for cover. Maya was already moving, her medical bag transformed into an arsenal of improvised weapons. Syringes filled with epinephrine became cardiac bombs, inject into an enemy's neck and watch their heart explode from overstimulation. Surgical tubing became garrotes. Even her stethoscope could crush a windpipe if applied with sufficient force and anatomical knowledge. A mercenary rounded the bar, weapon raised. Maya struck with the speed of a striking cobra, her fingers finding the pressure points at the base of his skull. The man dropped like a stone, his nervous system temporarily scrambled by precisely applied force. But Maya didn't stop there. She knew exactly how long he'd be unconscious, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. So she reached for a syringe of naloxone, the opioid reversal drug that could restart a stopped heart. She injected it directly into his femoral artery, then applied pressure to a different nerve cluster. The mercenary convulsed, his heart stopping, then starting again as the naloxone flooded his system. His partner, seeing his teammates seizing on the floor, faced an impossible choice: continue the attack or save his friend's life. He chose his friend, dropping his weapon to perform CPR. Maya smiled grimly and moved to her next target. The Iron Wolves were proving they were far more than bar-room brawlers. Razor had produced a military-issue combat knife and was fighting with the brutal efficiency of someone who'd learned close-quarters combat in Afghan caves. Spike moved like a ghost, using the bar's layout to his advantage, appearing and disappearing behind cover with practiced skill. Tank fought like his namesake, an unstoppable force of controlled violence. His .45 never seemed to run out of ammunition, each shot placed with the precision of a man who'd learned marksmanship when missing meant dying. When one mercenary got too close, Tank simply grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into the brick wall with enough force to crack both mortar and skull. "Where the hell did you boys learn to fight like this?" Harrison shouted over the gunfire as he put 2 round center mass into an attacker trying to breach through the kitchen. "Same place you did, Commander. Tank replied, reloading with automatic efficiency. Kandahar, Fallujah, Mosul. Half my crew are Marines who got tired of fighting other people's wars. Maya felt a surge of respect for these men who'd found brotherhood after service, who'd traded military structure for the loyalty of the road but never forgotten how to fight for their family. They moved together like a well-oiled machine, covering each other's positions, communicating with hand signals and shared understanding. But the mercenaries were professionals too, and they'd regrouped after the initial casualties. Maya could hear boots on the roof. The skylight team was moving into position. The rear exit was being covered, trapping them inside like rats in a cage. We need to move, she called out. They're boxing us in. Where to? Tank demanded, putting another round through the window to discourage a sniper's aim. Maya's mind raced through tactical options. The bar was a death trap, too many entry points, not enough cover, limited ammunition. But she'd spent 3 years studying this neighborhood, learning every alley and escape route as part of her survival protocols. Steam tunnels, she said. There's access through the basement. The whole block is connected underground, old infrastructure from the 20s. Harrison nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Tank, can your people hold them here while we get the civilians out? We can hold, Tank confirmed grimly. But not for long. These boys know their business. Before anyone could respond, the skylight exploded inward as rappelling lines dropped from above. 2 more mercenaries fast roped into the bar, landing with cat-like grace among the overturned tables and broken glass. Maya spun toward the new threat, a scalpel already in her hand. But as the first attacker raised his weapon, she saw his face clearly for the first time. The scalpel slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering on the floor. The man pointing an assault rifle at her heart had been dead for 3 years. She'd watched him die in Syrian sand, held his hand as he bled out from shrapnel wounds that no field medicine could heal. She'd carved his name into her own skin as a memorial to his sacrifice. Hello, Maya, said Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, her former teammate, her brother-in-arms, the man whose death had haunted her dreams for 3 years. Miss me? If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. Time stopped. Maya stared at the face she'd mourned, the man whose name was carved into her flesh as a permanent reminder of loss and sacrifice. Carlos Rodriguez stood before her in black tactical gear, very much alive, very much pointing a weapon at her heart. The familiar scar along his jawline was still there, a souvenir from Kandahar when an IED fragment had nearly taken his head off. His dark eyes held the same intelligence that had made him the best combat medic she'd ever worked with. But something else lived in those eyes now, something that made Maya's blood run cold. Fear. Bone-deep, soul-crushing fear. Carlos. His name came out like a prayer, like a curse. You're supposed to be dead. Yeah, well, so are you. His weapon never wavered, but Maya could see his hands trembling slightly. Funny how things work out. Around them, the firefight continued, but it felt distant, muffled, as if she were experiencing it through water. Tank and his crew were still engaged with the other mercenaries, the sound of gunfire and breaking glass creating a violent symphony. But Maya's entire world had narrowed to the man she'd loved like a brother, now pointing a gun at her chest. Stand down. Rodriguez called out to his team, his voice carrying the authority of command. I've got the primary target. The gunfire gradually ceased, though Maya could feel weapons still trained on every person in the bar. The surviving mercenaries maintained their positions, fingers on triggers, ready to resume the slaughter at a moment's notice. Tank lowered his .45 but didn't holster it, his eyes moving between Maya and Rodriguez with predatory intensity. Friend of yours, Doc? He was. Maya's voice was hollow, distant. I watched him die 3 years ago in Syria. Held his hand while he bled out. Rodriguez's face twisted with something that might have been pain. You watched me get captured, Maya. There's a difference. The blood, the wounds. Maya's medical training automatically catalogued what she remembered from that day. You had a penetrating abdominal wound, massive blood loss, no pulse. Faked. Rodriguez's admission came out like a confession. All of it. The blood was from a transfusion bag I'd hidden in my gear. The wounds were superficial cuts designed to look fatal. Even the flatline was staged, a little succinylcholine to stop my heart temporarily. Maya felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Everything she believed about that day, about Carlos's heroic death, about her own survival, all of it was a lie. Why? The word came out barely above a whisper. Rodriguez glanced around the bar, taking in the destruction, the bodies of his fallen teammates, the civilians cowering behind cover. When he looked back at Maya, his eyes held 3 years of accumulated guilt and pain. Because I was supposed to kill you all. The admission hit the bar like a physical blow. Tank stepped closer to Maya, his protective instincts overriding tactical caution. Harrison cursed under his breath, pieces of a 3-year-old puzzle finally clicking into place. The ambush wasn't random, Rodriguez continued, his voice growing stronger as the confession poured out of him. It was planned. Coordinated. Our commanding officer, Colonel Davidson, he sold us out to Syrian intelligence. Maya's mind reeled. Davidson? But he was CIA, Rodriguez cut her off. Deep cover, planted in the Pentagon to oversee shadow med operations. Maya, we weren't just witnesses to arms dealing. We were collecting evidence. Names, dates, financial records. Do you remember the hard drives we recovered from that compound in Aleppo? Maya's blood turned to ice as the memory surfaced. 6 months before the ambush, their team had raided a weapons storage facility. They'd found computers, financial records, communications that documented millions of dollars in arms sales to terrorist organizations. At the time, they'd thought they'd struck a major intelligence bonanza. Those drives contained evidence of a CIA faction selling weapons to both sides of the conflict, Rodriguez said. American weapons to Syrian rebels, Russian weapons to Assad's forces, Chinese weapons to ISIS. They were playing every angle, prolonging the war to maximize profits. Tank's face had gone stone cold. And you were witnesses. Worse. We were federal agents who'd stumbled onto the biggest arms-dealing conspiracy in American history. Rodriguez's weapon lowered slightly, but his stance remained ready. Davidson couldn't just transfer us or bury us in desk jobs. We'd seen too much, documented too much. We had to die. Maya felt sick. So he sent us into an ambush. He sent you into an ambush. I was supposed to make sure none of you survived. Rodriguez's voice cracked. I was supposed to put bullets in your heads while you were down, make sure there were no witnesses to testify. But you didn't. Maya's voice held a note of desperate hope. No. I couldn't. You were my family, my team. Rodriguez's composure finally cracked, revealing the broken man beneath the soldier's facade. So I faked my own death and let you escape. I thought maybe if Davidson believed we were all dead, he'd leave it alone. But he didn't. No. Because 3 days after the ambush, Syrian forces captured me. Rodriguez's eyes went distant, remembering horrors Maya could only imagine. Turns out, Davidson had made a deal with their intelligence services. They got to keep one Shadow Med operative alive for interrogation. Lucky me. Maya could see the torture scars now, thin white lines around Rodriguez's wrists and neck, marks that spoke of prolonged, professional abuse. Her heart broke for the man who'd sacrificed himself to save his team. How long? She asked quietly. 18 months. 18 months of creative interrogation, psychological warfare, pharmacological enhancement. Rodriguez's laugh was bitter as broken glass. They broke me, Maya. Piece by piece, memory by memory, until there was nothing left but compliance. Tank had been listening with growing anger, his massive hands clenched into fists. So now you work for them. Now I stay alive, Rodriguez corrected. They own me, body and soul. Every mission, every kill, every betrayal, it's all to keep breathing one more day. Maya stepped forward, ignoring the weapons trained on her. Carlos, it doesn't have to be this way. We can protect you, get you out. There is no out. Rodriguez's shout echoed through the bar. These people own senators, judges, generals. They have reach you can't imagine, resources that make the Pentagon look like a corner grocery store. His voice dropped to a whisper. They have my sister, Maya. My 8-year-old niece. If I don't complete this mission, they die. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. She remembered Rodriguez's family, his sister Maria who'd been working her way through nursing school, little Sofia who'd sent him crayon drawings that he'd carried in his kit. The same innocent people Maya had spent 3 years trying to protect were being used as leverage against her oldest friend. What do they want? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. You. Alive. They need to know what evidence you have, who you've told, what kind of insurance policies you might have stashed away. Rodriguez raised his weapon again, but Maya could see his heart wasn't in it. If you come quietly, they'll let these people live. If you fight, well, you've seen what my team is capable of. Maya looked around the bar at the faces watching her, Tank and his crew, Harrison, Sarah and Eddie cowering in the back. These people had risked their lives for her, offered her something she hadn't experienced in 3 years, family. Now that family was in danger because of her past. And after they question me? Maya asked. After they get what they want? Rodriguez's silence was answer enough. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. She could fight, probably take down Rodriguez and maybe 1 or 2 others before they killed her. But the innocent people in this bar would die, and her death wouldn't stop the conspiracy that had already claimed so many lives. Or she could surrender, buy time, hope that somehow she could find a way to turn the tables from the inside. When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. Okay, she said quietly. I'll come with you. Tank stepped forward immediately. Like hell you will. It's the only way, Maya said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. These people, they don't leave loose ends. If I fight, everyone dies. If I surrender, maybe they kill you slow instead of fast, Tank finished grimly. That's not acceptable. Maya reached for her medical bag, the improvised weapons she'd been using still scattered on the floor. It's not your choice to make. But as she handed over her scalpels and syringes to Rodriguez, she leaned close to Tank, her voice barely a whisper, Pier 47. Warehouse District. 1 hour after we leave. Bring everything you've got. Tank's eyes widened as he understood. Maya wasn't surrendering, she was setting a trap. Rodriguez secured her weapons, professional and efficient. Everyone stays exactly where they are for 30 minutes after we leave. Anyone follows us, anyone makes a phone call, and the civilians start dying. Are we clear? Tank nodded slowly, his face a mask of controlled rage. Crystal. As Rodriguez gestured toward the door, Maya took one last look around the bar that had become her sanctuary, at the people who'd become her family. She met Tank's eyes one final time, seeing the promise there. The Iron Wolves would come for her. They always protected their own. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. The abandoned meatpacking plant on Pier 47 looked exactly like what it was, a perfect place for people to disappear forever. Maya sat zip-tied to a metal chair in what had once been the main processing floor, industrial hooks still hanging from overhead tracks like steel vultures. The smell of old blood and rust permeated everything, a metallic tang that coated the back of her throat. Rodriguez stood 20 feet away, speaking in low tones with a man Maya recognized from surveillance photos Harrison had shown her, Deputy Director Marcus Webb, the CIA official who'd supposedly been investigating Shadow Med's disappearance. Seeing him here confirmed everything. The fox had been guarding the henhouse all along. She's been uncooperative so far, Rodriguez was saying, his voice carrying the flat tone of a man reporting mission status. Standard interrogation techniques haven't yielded actionable intelligence. Webb nodded, his gray suit incongruous in the industrial setting. Then we'll have to be more creative. The pharmaceutical approach should loosen her tongue. Maya forced herself to remain still, calm, even as fear clawed at her gut. She'd given Tank coordinates, but not to this location. The address she'd whispered was for a different facility entirely, a black site warehouse 8 miles north where Harrison's intelligence suggested other Shadow Med survivors were being held. If Tank followed her directions, he'd find the real prize, living proof of the conspiracy that went all the way to the top of the CIA. But that would only help if she could survive long enough for the rescue to matter. Before we begin the enhanced interrogation, Webb continued, pulling out a tablet, let's review what we know. Maya Rodriguez, trauma nurse at Chicago General, spotless civilian record for 3 years. But underneath. He swiped through files. Shadow Med operative with clearance for operations that officially never existed. Maya met his gaze steadily. I don't know what you're talking about. Webb smiled, the expression cold as winter steel. Of course you don't. Just like you don't know about the hard drives your team recovered in Aleppo. The financial records documenting arms sales to terrorist organizations. The communications proving CIA involvement in weapons trafficking. If such evidence existed, Maya said carefully, and if I had access to it, what makes you think I'd give it to you? Because if you don't, a lot of innocent people are going to die. Webb's tablet showed surveillance photos of Chicago General Hospital. Your co-workers, your patients, the wounded veterans you spend your nights caring for. It would be tragic if something happened to them. Maya's blood turned to ice, but she kept her expression neutral. You'd attack a hospital? We'd prevent a terrorist attack on a hospital, Webb corrected. One carried out by Syrian operatives seeking revenge for American interference in their civil war. Of course, by the time we respond to the intelligence tip, it will be too late to save everyone. The casual way he discussed mass murder made Maya's stomach churn. These weren't soldiers fighting for their country, they were sociopaths using patriotism as cover for profit and power. How many people would die? She asked quietly. The night shift has about 300 staff members, Webb said, consulting his tablet. Plus approximately 200 patients, most of them veterans wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. Tragic irony, really, soldiers surviving war only to die in a terrorist attack on American soil. Maya closed her eyes, seeing the faces of her colleagues, her patients. Maria in pediatrics, who brought her daughter to work during school holidays. Dr. Patel, who'd lost his own son in Kandahar and dedicated his life to saving other people's children. Veterans like Sergeant Martinez, who'd lost both legs to an IED and was finally learning to walk again. All of them would die unless she cooperated. What do you want? She asked. Everything. Every piece of evidence your team collected, every backup copy, every insurance policy you might have hidden away. Webb leaned closer. We know Shadow Med operatives were trained to create multiple contingencies. Where are the files, Maya? Maya's mind raced. She needed to buy time, not just for Tank's rescue mission but for her own plan to work. The coordinates she'd given him weren't random. Harrison had mentioned the black site during their conversation, along with intelligence about other survivors. If Tank found them, if he could get them to safety, they'd have witnesses who could corroborate her testimony. But she needed to survive long enough to testify. I'll need guarantees, she said. Proof that you'll honor your word about the hospital. Webb gestured to Rodriguez, who approached with a syringe filled with clear liquid. I'm afraid that's not how this works. You tell us what we need to know, and we decide whether your cooperation has been sufficient. Maya recognized the drug, propofol, a powerful anesthetic that in controlled doses could break down psychological barriers. But Maya knew something about drugs that Webb didn't. She'd spent 3 years working trauma medicine, building up tolerance to various pharmaceutical agents through accidental exposure. Wait, she said as Rodriguez prepared the injection. You're making a mistake. The evidence isn't hidden in some safety deposit box or buried in a computer file. It's memorized. Every transaction, every date, every name, it's all up here. She tapped her temple. Kill me or fry my brain with drugs, and you'll never find it all. Webb paused, considering. You're saying you have total recall of classified financial documents? I'm saying I was trained to be a walking backup drive, Maya lied smoothly. Shadow Med operatives couldn't carry physical evidence into hostile territory. We memorized everything: mission parameters, extraction routes, intelligence files. All of it. It was plausible enough to give Webb pause. Maya had indeed been trained in memory techniques, though not to the extent she was claiming. But the lie bought her time and, more importantly, made her too valuable to drug into compliance. Interesting, Webb said. In that case, we'll try a different approach. Rodriguez, begin with standard pressure point interrogation. If she's telling the truth about her memory, we need her conscious and coherent. Rodriguez's face remained impassive, but Maya caught the flicker of reluctance in his eyes. He was still her friend, still the man who'd saved her life 3 years ago. The question was whether that friendship was stronger than his fear for his family. As Rodriguez approached with zip-tie cutters, Maya heard it, the distant sound of motorcycle engines, multiple bikes moving fast through the warehouse district. Tank and the Iron Wolves were making their play, but not here. 8 miles north, at the coordinates she'd given them. She hoped they found what they were looking for. Rodriguez cut her restraints and immediately twisted her arm behind her back, applying pressure to nerve clusters that sent lightning through her shoulder. Maya gasped but didn't cry out. She'd endured worse in Syria, and she needed to project strength. The Aleppo files, Webb said conversationally. Start with those. Names, account numbers, transaction amounts. Maya gritted her teeth against the pain radiating down her arm. Go to hell. Rodriguez increased the pressure, and Maya's vision grayed at the edges. But through the haze of pain, she heard something that made her blood freeze. Webb talking quietly into his phone. Operation is greenlit for 0400 hours. Syrian operatives will breach the hospital's east wing, targeting the veterans ward first. Make sure our response team is delayed by at least 30 minutes. We need maximum casualties for credibility. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. They weren't just threatening the hospital, they were actually planning to attack it. Hundreds of innocent people would die, and Webb would use their deaths to justify increased CIA operations in Syria, more arms deals, more profit built on American blood. She had to escape. Had to warn them. But first, she had to survive whatever Rodriguez was about to do to her. The account numbers, Maya, Rodriguez said quietly, his voice full of regret. Please. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Maya looked into the eyes of the man who'd once been her brother, seeing the pain there, the guilt, the desperate love for family that had driven him to this betrayal. In that moment, she made a choice that would either save them all or doom them both. Carlos, she whispered, so low that only he could hear. Tank found them. Your sister, your niece, they're safe. Rodriguez's grip loosened fractionally, hope flickering in his dark eyes. The Iron Wolves got them out 20 minutes ago, Maya continued, the lie flowing smoothly off her tongue. Maria and Sophia are under protection. You don't have to do this anymore. For a heartbeat, Rodriguez's facade cracked completely, revealing the broken man underneath. Then Webb's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Rodriguez. Is there a problem? Rodriguez's hand tightened on Maya's arm again, but this time she felt the difference. He was positioning her, not restraining her. Getting her ready to move. No problem, sir, Rodriguez called back. Just confirming her story about the memorized files. Maya felt something small and hard pressed into her palm, a folding knife, military issue, sharp enough to cut through restraints or arteries with equal efficiency. When I say run, Rodriguez breathed against her ear, you head for the loading dock. Motorcycle waiting outside, keys in the ignition. Maya's pulse spiked. Rodriguez was making his choice, finally picking a side after 3 years of survival at any cost. But as she prepared to move, Webb's phone rang. His conversation was brief, clipped, professional. Excellent, he said, hanging up. Our friends at Chicago General report unusual activity around the hospital. Extra security, federal agents asking questions. It seems someone has been talking. Webb's cold eyes fixed on Maya with laser intensity. Which means we're out of time. Rodriguez, forget the interrogation. Kill her. We attack the hospital in 2 hours whether we have the files or not. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. Kill her. We will attack the hospital in 2 hours whether we have the files or not. Webb's words hung in the air like a death sentence, but Maya was already moving. Rodriguez had given her the tools she needed, the knife in her palm, the positioning near the loading dock, and most importantly, the knowledge that he'd finally chosen his side. Roger that, sir, Rodriguez said, drawing his sidearm with deliberate slowness. As he raised the weapon, Maya saw him mouth a single word, now. She exploded into motion, the folding knife snapping open as she rolled behind a concrete pillar. Rodriguez's first shot went wide by design, the bullet sparking off metal hooks overhead. His second shot took out the facility's main electrical panel, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in hellish red shadows. Maya moved like a ghost through the industrial maze, her 3 years of studying this neighborhood paying dividends as she navigated by memory and instinct. Behind her, she could hear Webb screaming orders, his professional composure finally cracking. Find her. Lock down the perimeter. She doesn't leave here alive. But Maya was already at the loading dock, her hands finding the motorcycle Rodriguez had promised, a sleek black Yamaha with keys in the ignition. As the engine roared to life, she heard the distinctive thunder of Harley-Davidson V-twins approaching from the north. Tank and the Iron Wolves were coming. Maya gunned the Yamaha through the warehouse district's narrow streets, her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to reach hospital security. The call went straight to voicemail. Webb's people had probably jammed communications around Chicago General. She had to get there in person, had to warn them before the attack began. As she cornered onto Michigan Avenue, her rearview mirror filled with headlights, Webb's remaining mercenaries in black SUVs, closing fast. Maya leaned into the bike's power, weaving through late-night traffic with the precision of someone who'd learned to ride in Kandahar's chaos. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, package delivered. 5 presents unwrapped. Family reunion at primary location. Tank had found them. 5 survivors from other Shadow Med teams, living proof of the conspiracy that Webb was trying to bury. If Maya could get them to safety, if she could stop the hospital attack, they'd have enough evidence to bring down the entire network. But first, she had to survive the next 20 minutes. Chicago General Hospital loomed ahead, its familiar windows glowing like beacons in the night. Maya had spent 3 years walking these halls, saving lives with sutures and medication. Tonight, she'd save them with different skills. She abandoned the motorcycle at the emergency entrance, sprinting through automatic doors just as the first explosion shook the building's east wing. Webb hadn't been bluffing, the attack was real, professional, designed to maximize casualties among the veterans' ward. Maya's tactical mind automatically assessed the situation. 3 separate breach points, coordinated timing, suppressed weapons to minimize noise until maximum penetration was achieved. These weren't Syrian operatives, they were American mercenaries dressed to look like foreign terrorists. She reached the security office just as Tank's voice boomed through the lobby. Where is she? Maya spun to see the Iron Wolves pouring through the main entrance, Tank, Razor, Spike, and a dozen others, all armed and moving with military precision. Behind them came 5 figures she recognized from old mission photos, Shadow Med survivors, her brothers and sisters thought dead for years. 3rd floor, East Wing. Maya called out. They're targeting the veterans' ward. Tank's eyes found hers across the chaos, relief and rage warring in his expression. Doc. Thank Christ. What's the tactical situation? Professional assault team, 3 breach points, approximately 12 hostiles, Maya reported, her medical training and combat experience merging seamlessly. They're herding civilians toward the central corridor for maximum effect. Copy that. Tank was already moving, hand signals directing his crew with practiced efficiency. Razor, take the stairs. Spike, elevator. Everyone else, with me. Maya fell in beside Tank as they rushed toward the stairwell, her medical bag converted once again into an arsenal of improvised weapons. Tank, there's something you need to know. The attack isn't random, it's designed to look like foreign terrorism while covering up the CIA conspiracy. Then we make sure they don't get to write the history books, Tank growled, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The 3rd floor was a war zone. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, punctuated by muzzle flashes and the crack of gunfire. Maya could hear patients screaming, medical equipment crashing, the sounds of her professional world being torn apart by violence. But she also heard something else, the voices of her former teammates, Shadow Med operatives fighting alongside the Iron Wolves to protect the innocent. Staff Sergeant Chen, using medical equipment to create improvised explosives. Corpsman Williams, turning 4 stands into spears. Lieutenant Hassan, applying her knowledge of human anatomy to incapacitate attackers with surgical precision. They were ghosts made flesh, fighting to protect the same people they'd spent years healing. Maya moved through the corridors with deadly grace, each step taking her deeper into familiar territory that had become a battlefield. She found Dr. Patel barricaded in a supply closet with 6 patients, his hands shaking as he tried to tend wounds with inadequate supplies. Maya. His relief was palpable. Thank God. We have 3 gunshot wounds, 2 with arterial bleeding. I'll get them stabilized, Maya said, already moving. But we need to evacuate this floor. The attackers are herding everyone toward the central corridor. As she worked, applying pressure bandages and starting 4 lines, Maya's radio crackled with Tank's voice, "Doc, we've got a problem. Webb's here with reinforcements, and they're not trying to hide anymore." Maya's blood ran cold. If Webb was abandoning the terrorist cover story, it meant he planned to kill everyone who could testify, patients, staff, witnesses, everyone. "Copy that," she replied, helping Dr. Patel move the wounded toward the stairwell. "Fall back to defensive positions. I'm coming to you." But as she turned the corner toward the veterans' ward, Maya came face to face with Deputy Director Webb himself. He stood in the doorway of the room where Sergeant Martinez had been learning to walk again, a smoking pistol in his hand. Behind him, Martinez lay motionless on the floor. "You killed him," Maya said, her voice deadly calm. "You killed a wounded veteran." Webb's smile was cold as winter. "I'm cleaning up loose ends. Starting with the biggest one." He raised his weapon, but Maya was already moving. The scalpel left her hand with surgical precision, taking Webb in the wrist and sending his gun spinning away. She was on him before he could react, her medical knowledge allowing her to apply pressure to nerve clusters that dropped him to his knees. "This is for every soldier your greed killed," she whispered, applying pressure to his carotid artery. "Every life destroyed by your conspiracy." Webb's eyes bulged as consciousness faded, but Maya didn't let him die. Death was too easy for him. Instead, she zip-tied his hands and left him for federal agents who were already entering the building, Harrison's Pentagon contacts, finally arriving with authority to act. The rest of the battle was a clean-up operation. Webb's mercenaries, faced with federal agents and Iron Wolves working together, chose discretion over valor. Those who could escape did, those who couldn't surrendered to avoid the alternative. Maya found Tank in the veterans' ward, applying a pressure bandage to Razor's shoulder while keeping watch over a group of patients they'd evacuated from the line of fire. "Status report?" she asked, falling into the familiar rhythm of post-combat assessment. 5 hostiles down, rest scattered to the wind, Tank replied. "Your Shadow Med friends are something else. Document reminded me why I never wanted to fight against real operators." Maya knelt beside Sergeant Martinez, checking his pulse with practiced fingers. Weak but steady, Webb's shot had been meant to kill, but the old soldier was tougher than he looked. "He's going to make it," she announced, relief flooding her voice. Tank's hand found her shoulder, solid and reassuring. "So are we all, thanks to you." 3 hours later, Maya stood in the hospital's conference room watching federal agents arrest the last of Webb's conspirators. The evidence provided by the Shadow Med survivors had unraveled the entire network, arms deals, assassination orders, financial records that traced back to the highest levels of the CIA. Commander Harrison approached, his face showing exhaustion but also satisfaction. "It's over, Maya. The president has ordered a complete investigation. Shadow Med will be officially declassified, your team's service recognized." Maya nodded, but her attention was focused on the window overlooking the emergency room where her colleagues were treating the wounded. This was her world, her calling, the life she'd built from the ashes of her old one. "What happens now?" she asked. Harrison smiled. "Now you get to choose. The Pentagon is offering full reinstatement, back pay, a chance to help rebuild the Medical Special Operations Program." Maya considered it for a moment, then shook her head. "Thanks, but no. I've got a job. People who need me." Tank appeared in the doorway, his leather vest replaced by scrubs he'd borrowed from hospital staff. "Doc? They're asking for you in Trauma Bay 3. Some kind of motorcycle accident." Maya smiled, feeling the familiar pull of her chosen profession. "Duty calls." But as she moved toward the door, Tank caught her arm gently. "Maya? You know you've got family now, right? Iron wolves don't abandon their own." "I know," she said, surprising herself with how much those words meant. "Thank you." 6 months later. Maya finished her shift at Chicago General and walked out into the Chicago morning, exhaustion and satisfaction warring in her chest. Trauma surgery on a teenage car accident victim, successful resuscitation of an overdose case, and 3 hours of delicate work repairing a veteran's damaged prosthetic attachment. Just another night saving lives. The parking lot held a familiar sight, a row of Harley-Davidsons gleaming in the morning sun, their riders waiting patiently for her shift to end. Tank sat on his bike reading a medical journal. He'd started taking EMT classes, claiming someone needed to watch her back in the field. But it was the newest bike in the lineup that made Maya smile. Commander Harrison's Road King, complete with saddlebags and a prospect patch reading, Hawk. The career military officer had traded his uniform for leather, his Pentagon office for the road, but his dedication to protecting his people remained unchanged. "How was the shift, Doc?" Harrison asked as she approached. "Saved 3 lives, maybe 4 if that prosthetic surgery takes," Maya replied, settling onto her own bike, a gift from the Iron Wolves when she'd officially joined their family. Tank gunned his engine, the Harley's rumble cutting through the morning air. "Rusty's for breakfast?" "Eddie's making his famous coffee." Maya nodded, following the convoy as they wound through Chicago's streets toward the bar that had become their sanctuary. Rusty's had been rebuilt after the firefight, but more than that, it had become something special, neutral ground where veterans of all kinds could find family, understanding, and the kind of peace that came from being among people who'd faced the darkness and chosen to keep fighting. As they pulled up outside the familiar neon sign, Maya saw the new addition Eddie had installed, a small plaque by the door reading, Shadow Med Memorial, for those who served in silence. Below it, in smaller letters, all veterans welcome. All stories honored. Maya dismounted her bike and looked around at the family she'd found in the most unlikely places, bikers and spooks, nurses and warriors, all of them bound together by shared scars and mutual respect. She'd started as Maya Rodriguez, trauma nurse, living a carefully constructed lie to hide from her past. Now she was Maya Rodriguez, shadow medic, Iron Wolf, protector of the innocent and healer of the wounded. For the first time in 3 years, she was exactly who she was supposed to be. "Come on, Doc," Tank called from the bar's entrance. "Coffee's getting cold, and Hawk's got stories from the old days you won't believe." Maya smiled and followed her family inside, ready for whatever came next. She'd learned that sometimes the best way to heal from the past was to build a future worth protecting. And she had plenty of both. I know you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. If you have thoughts, please do well to drop them in the comments section below. And share this video to family and friends.